One, two.
Erin!
Um,
Hi, welcome to the Video and Vinyl Club. I am Emmy Wildwood. I'm a musician and a producer and an art director. And this is my beautiful co-host, Erin Mars.
I'm Erin Mars, and I am a writer, a director, a musician, an actor, a million other things. But I am hosting with Emmy today and for every episode of this podcast
For the rest of your
forever. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today, guys. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving if you celebrated. And if you decided to just order Chinese food and chill, good for you. Self-care. Self-care. Emmy, did you have a nice Thanksgiving?
I had a really cute, intimate Thanksgiving with
Jenny.
Jenny, with my she was pretty tame, except
I
for
love Jenny. I'm a big Jenny fan.
yeah, she's hilarious. She did think that my turkey was undercooked and
Ooh.
acted skeptical, and I was like, "You're wrong." And then we cut into the rest of it after she left, and she was right. But we tried to do the turkey without a thermometer,
Ooh, okay.
and we didn't know how many pounds it was, so we guessed.
Whoa, double gamble.
Yeah,
Double
it
gamble.
was. It probably needed another half hour. That's what I
Well,
think.
that's okay. You live and learn, right? You're still here.
I'm still here. How was your Thanksgiving?
My Thanksgiving was great. So we hosted about 18 people,
18?
and we had some neighbors and friends pop over during the day before we had dinner. And it was actually really nice. And for people who don't know, I have a blended family. I have three really amazing stepchildren. I kind of hate that word stepchildren because it denotes just like not a great relationship, but we actually have a beautiful relationship. So maybe bonus children is the better term. But so we had their mom and her parents over too. And it was just really lovely. I think everybody had a really nice time. It was a lot of work. It's exhausting. It's a lot of people. But it's the memory making.
Yeah. Did you have a 20-pound turkey?
Uh-huh. No, we got two 12-pound turkeys. So we had one my husband's brother made in the oven, and then Bobby, my husband, made the other turkey in a smoker that he bought.
Oh.
So that turkey never was done in time for the meal. So we had the first turkey, and then the other turkey came out, and it was, nice that we had that much food. So everybody got what they needed and wanted.
That's cute.
Yeah. So speaking of family gatherings, let's jump into talking about our movie today, which is Here, directed by Robert Zemeckis.
I thought this was a appropriate choice for the holiday season. As you guys know, we started this podcast off with, well, it started in September, but very quickly it was October, and we covered like a million horror films and suspense films, and it was getting a little dark over here at the Video and Vinyl Club. But so when November came around, we decided we'd sort of like lighten it up. Although we have it hasn't exactly been light, but it's been maybe not so horror-y, obviously.
Yeah, we didn't do a deep dive into the rom-coms.
No,
but now that we're in December, you know what's here? The wonderful Hallmark movies. Maybe we'll touch on a couple of those.
No.
You never know. All right. Or
Speaking of Hallmark movies, no. So we watched Here. It was a story about a house and the very long history of that house. I mean, long history. We're talking, we watched an asteroid hit the Earth during this film. So they went literally all the way back. And it is wholesome in some ways, but really more about real life, I'd say. from the beginning of time, bringing it as current as the COVID epidemic and I don't know, all the different stories of the families that lived there, right?
Yeah. So what was interesting to me, and there's kind of some crossover a little bit, two of the stars of the film were also the stars of Forrest Gump, which was also written and directed by Robert Zemeckis. And that would be Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. And they reprised, roles as being in a romantic relationship. And to that end, I think that family is the main family that we see the most. The film does jump in time at different moments, and to the home across the street where the son of Benjamin Franklin was living. And so we kind of go to this period, even like there's a scene with Native Americans falling in love in this location. And it's mostly shot at one angle. You're seeing primarily one room and different families living in that space, right? Now, to me, being the main family that we're watching, Tom Hanks and Robin Wright and their family, I felt like this movie should have been watched in October because it's basically a horror film about a woman has, I mean, straight up, it's like she has ambitions and dreams and everybody basically shits on them and she gets trapped within this home that she's like, please let us leave. And her husband's like, we can't because of taxes. I mean, it's a fucking nightmare.
We have to live with my parents.
Yeah. Oh my God. And it's, the part of it that really gets you or like really hit me. It's like, she's 18 years old. Like, so this couple gets married pretty much in high school. And if you go by the timeline, this is kind of the 70s, right? So Tom Hanks' parents had lived in the house. That's the house he grew up in. And his father had been in World War II. So they imply that, their son is born early 50s. So you can assume this young high school couple, let's say they're getting married and it's like late 60s, right? Maybe 1970, but I think it's like late 60s. And Robin Wright's character, when she meets the parents, they're trying to get to know her and they realize she's from a really nice family that's like probably wealthier than Tom's family because they're like, how did you meet her? She seems like a great catch. What the hell did you do to get her? And she tells them, I want to go to law school. I want to be a lawyer. To which his father says, what's wrong with being a homemaker? What's wrong with being a wife?
The father is sort of across the board an a-hole, which, I think they are attributing to the fact that he is being full-blown alcoholic, clearly. He's drunk and says stupid stuff all the time. So, and wakes up angry and gets disgruntled. And so therefore, I think we could safely say he's an alcoholic, maybe with a little bit of PTSD. He kind of
definitely
has the drifting look head in moments when he talks about the past and so forth.
Yeah. And that's played by Paul Bettany, who I thought did a really perfect job in kind of being that tone of person. And he definitely has PTSD. In the one story that he finally tells his son, who's like, hey, can you tell me about the war? He's like, there was this guy who I knew and he had two different colored eyes and I saw his jaw get blown off in front of me. And his son's like, what? Like,
then what?
So then what happened? And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. And he makes himself another drink. So we can say that's like a wide rush to paint a generation of, but I think in some ways there's a lot of truth there. We watched that film recently, The Best Years of Our Lives, which we watched to commemorate Veterans Day. We watched a few episodes ago. And that was all about people coming back from World War II and the way they dealt with it. And some of them drank and some of them, did other things. It was really difficult to kind of reacclimate. So that's definitely a point that you can say, yeah, that's historically accurate. Now let's just go back for a second to them getting married at 18.
Right.
She's pregnant. Let's
Yeah.
say that, so let's guesstimate the year is like late 60s. Well, other things that are going on in that time, which this film touches on zero, the civil rights movement, women's lib, zero mention of those things.
Good point.
Zero.
Yeah.
So this young woman who's like, I want to be a lawyer, and then she gets pregnant at 18 and they get married. There's never the thought of, you know what, I'm going to get a part-time job, even though I'm a mom, I'm a young mom. Maybe my kid goes to preschool and I can get a community college degree and figure out law school somehow. And her husband is a painter. And you said something really interesting when we were talking about this very briefly, because we try not to talk about the films too much before we get on the pod.
Yeah, we save it.
Save our good comments.
Yeah.
So the father's a painter. So let's just talk about that. Like somebody putting aside their artistic ambitions.
Yeah. So Robin Wright gets pregnant. They have to move in with his parents because they're 18 and they don't have anywhere to live. And he is a artist and a really talented one. And it's one of the things that she loves the most about him. And when she gets pregnant, he goes out and gets a job. And then he comes home and says, I got the job. And he packs up everything, all of his art, all of his paint, all of his easel, and puts it away like forever, which is sort of the beginning or signals the decline of their connection, and maybe signals the beginning of the change of his personality, and therefore the reason that Robin Wright fell in love with him. But I just was like, why does he have to put it away forever? Like, he can't paint on the weekend. Like, there's no moment that you can paint. You can't just be an artist like in as a hobby still, you know? I don't know. Seems silly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I think it, again, how, to me, another horror story element is just the father who's always so negative. He's just comes in and nags on anything. It's like, you got her pregnant, you could have done stuff with your life, ruined your life, you know. And of course the mother has a different reaction. She just kind of gives him a hug and is like, oh, this is kind of amazing, like I'm going to be a grandmother, you know. Has like that genuine love, beautiful moment of seeing big picture there, right? Where the father, and I think it kind of feels like the father is pushing his son to give up painting. He's like, you're never going to make any money with that. It's never going to happen. Whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And that also is another element to like them staying in that house.
Yeah.
Can you imagine living with your in-laws your whole life? Pretty much your whole marriage.
No,
I mean,
and his excuse was, as you said, interest rates. He said the interest rates were too high. But it's like he had a job and he could have gotten a house. Like, I don't know, maybe he didn't want to leave his dad alone with his mom. I don't know, but none of that is really, I mean, we have to do all that work ourselves, like to ask ourselves why, besides the fact that he's like maybe inherited his father's gloomy, grumpy Gus sort of attitude towards the world, and all of the good stuff about him comes from his mother, who really is sort of the light of the story. I mean, she's the sort of gentle, soft side of his personality, maybe, that he inherited. So I don't know. It just feels a little like, why though? And then why did she not sort of bring these things up sooner? I guess we have to assume that Robin Wright felt like she had very few options or something back then. But this is all part of the problems with the story. We have to assume why. Why didn't she ask more? Why didn't she fight for it more? She'd ask once and just accept everything he said. Like, there are different times, but I don't buy that about it being that different. Like, women still asked for what they wanted. If in some ways they expected even more back then. You know?
Yeah. And I think that was even part of the issue when you're talking about time periods from a story and you touch on the politics of what's happening with the revolution. right? With Benjamin Franklin's family. None of the politics is really discussed as to what's really happening for the other pieces.
Yeah.
There's a couple, the man's an inventor, he invents the lazy boy.
Wait, who
And
is? Oh, yeah. One of the couples from like, what was it, like the early 20s or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, that's cool. And then it's difficult to become emotionally attached to any of the characters in a
Oh,
more
yeah.
deep way where you actually kind of really care. And even the ending of the film, which we don't have to really share, it just generally feels like a letdown.
I mean, I would say I probably connected the most with the father who was the drunk. He sort of showed the most emotional landscape, and we get to see him improve as a person the most, I guess. So I have a feeling this movie was underbaked a little bit.
Yeah.
And the reason why I feel like maybe it was underbaked is because, okay, well, there's two things. This movie is based on a graphic novel.
Yes.
So, the writer of the graphic novel is Richard McGuire. It was based on Richard McGuire's 2014 graphic novel. The film presents a non-linear narrative, like we were speaking about earlier.
Yep.
So there's not a lot of variety in location. There just really isn't. It's really the one shot of the room. And I guess I can see how a graphic novel, it makes more sense. It's like we're sort of seeing, we talked about this with Dick Tracy way back in the beginning, but it's like you're recreating drawings. And so, you kind of imagine these shots that would look like they were in a comic book, a graphic novel of some sort. And so they're all fitting in these little boxes, and their characters are two-dimensional, a whole lot like characters are in graphic novels. So maybe they feel two-dimensional because they're based on two-dimensional characters. And B, this movie utilizes this new backwards aging technology. So it uses like AI to recreate what Tom Hanks would have looked like at the age of 18, and however the technology works. I'm pretty sure they're using, there's like body doubles, and they like put a face across the body double or whatever. Because of that, it's a little awkward. Just feels a little weird. It's like he's acting to, the acting maybe seems stiff and strange because he's not really in that room doing that acting. It's like his face, or maybe he is, but it's like jagged and put together. And, anytime you do anything with AI, if you think about it, like using AI for apps or photos or anything like that, images, there can be some sort of awkward, non-smooth kind of like pieces, like somebody's hand might look a little weird in an AI image or something like that. I don't know if I'm saying this eloquently.
I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
It's to a point where it's disconcerting enough that you stop focusing on what the people are doing and start going, something's kind of off.
Yeah.
Because
or
it feels slightly unnatural.
I saw this one review that called their performances soulless. Yikes.
Yeah.
You know why?
Why?
Because AI recreations don't have souls.
That's true.
This is the problem with AI. It's like it can be useful in collecting data and assisting in certain situations, but when we start trying to sub out the human job, the emotion, Frankensteining all of that together, it gets weird. That's
especially,
really,
I mean, especially for actors, as the main job is channeling the human experience.
Yeah.
And being a conduit for people to understand the emotions that these people are having in these moments. so that you can have a better understanding of yourself, right? That's what I think is so powerful about the arts in general, and especially film and theater. It can be used as a tool for self-reflection. By seeing and understanding other people's stories, we understand and see moments in ourselves that reflect those experiences.
Yes.
I want to talk about really briefly a little bit more about Robert Zemeckis. He is the director, for people who are not familiar with this, he directed Back to the Future. He directed Forrest Gump. He has directed many films that have an element of like being zany and kind of like have a lot of special effects. And he's got this like comedy aspect to him, right? So it's like he directed Romancing the Stone, he directed 1941, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which has, people haven't seen that or are familiar with that, that's got like cartoons and people. So he directed that one. He directed Contact. And we already talked about how he directed Forrest Gump. So he is a kind of creator who, and Steven Spielberg has actually produced many of his films. So you can think of him as kind of like a more forward-thinking filmmaker in the
like kind of genius.
Kind of, yeah. And like who's willing to get in there and say like, oh, that's a new special effect technique. Like, yeah, let me try it out. Let me get in there. And also someone who clearly likes types of stories that have elements that deal with time, because Back to the Future deals with going back to the future and how the past affects, you know, the present. And Forrest Gump, we're seeing a linear, you know, the guy's life moving along linearly. Contact, which is a film about making contact with aliens and all these different things. He's also done a lot of work with Tom Hanks in particular. And it's one of these things where you can see there's certain directors who have worked a bunch with different actors, and they'll kind of like say, you just start to notice, oh, this director is working with this actor on quite a few films, which means they obviously have a good working relationship, and they've probably developed, you know, a language within a language in which they can communicate to each other and know effectively what is expected of them, or, you know, how they're going to best have that working relationship. So that being said, you know, Tom Hanks, he was nominated for an Oscar in Forrest Gump.
Yep.
Okay. And so I feel like if you're an actor and you work with somebody, and then the work that you do together culminates in you being nominated for a performance for the first time, because Tom Hanks, historically, he was a comedy actor. Okay. So he was in this show about these two guys who live in this apartment, and this is early in his career. Two guys who live in this apartment, and they have to dress like women so that they can get to stay in this apartment building that's just for girls. And then, of course, hilarity ensues and all kinds of stuff like that. But you know, from there, it's like he had gotten into a lot of things where he was kind of seen as like a comedy guy. He's kind of like the funny guy. And of course, his career developed and grew. And we've seen him as, now I would say, people don't think of him necessarily as like a comedy actor, but you think of him as, to me, like the dad, like the nice dad, you know?
Oh,
and
yeah.
he's been in that role a lot, and he does that role really well. But he also does have those elements still of like, what's this? Like he does have that ability to go kind of zany and over the top. All of this is to say, I think sometimes people agree to do certain projects because of the relationships they have with the people who are involved. And sometimes that's great. And sometimes I don't think that necessarily works in your favor. And I think like this film, I didn't enjoy. I think there was a lot of holes. You're totally right about it being a graphic novel. I mean, in defense of graphic novels, there have been a lot of graphic novels that have been turned into films and done really well.
Yeah.
But I think that's a different kind of story than this.
Yeah. When Erin called me, she was like, is this a play? Was this a play? Like, why does it feel like a play? Because it's like basically it feels like there's, you know how a stage is, they'll do a setup and basically like to know you're in a new scene, the lights will go down and the lights will go up and the actors will be in a different area of the same room to create variety or whatever. And that's
Yes.
basically all that was happening. And maybe you see the furniture change a little bit, and it's really just kind of feels like a staged production. And we've seen lots of movies based on graphic novels that just like nail it. That's not really an excuse. I guess it's just maybe like the way they approached it. It's possible it just didn't work. They were trying to make it feel that way, and that didn't translate whatsoever. So I've been a fan of Tom Hanks my whole life, like you, and I loved him in Splash. Oh, so good. And was one of my favorite childhood movies, and Turner and Hooch, and he was hilarious. And then he did what a lot of comedians dream of, which is transition their career of doing sort of like goofball comedies into these sort of Oscar-winning performances because of their willingness to be so extreme in their delivery of performances. It can often be so moving to see somebody kind of like go all the way instead of practicing a ton of restraint. It's just one way of doing things, and he sort of nails it in every way. Now, in more recent years, I mean, we haven't seen so many of those movies and performances from Tom. I'd like to say every movie he's put out has been Forrest Gump or Castaway or what have you, but
or Sleepless in Seattle.
Or Sleepless in Seattle, best movie of all time.
What about Philadelphia?
Oh my gosh.
You have not seen that film, Philadelphia. That's about a man who is HIV positive. He has AIDS. It is a gorgeous and heartbreaking film. I mean, that to me was the film that kind of proved he's an actual actor, right?
He won an Oscar, didn't he, for Philadelphia? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. And then very shortly after Forrest Gump, and it was like a wham bam, like 2 year in a row kind of a situation.
Yeah, so Tom Hanks won Best Actor in a Leading Role for Philadelphia. The film itself was a nominee for Best Screenwriting. It won Best Music. It was nominated for Best Original Song. It had 20 nominations overall. So huge, huge film.
Yeah. So it was really huge. And then he won Forrest Gump shortly after that, and he blew everybody's minds. And like, now why is he making movies like, what's that movie Sully about the guy who like lands the plane in the Easter River?
Yeah.
when a pigeon gets caught under the wing. Nick and I have like a total joke. My husband and I have a total inside joke about Sully because it was like pushed really hard digitally when it first came out for like 2 years. It was like it was like advertised before every movie. It'd be like, watch out for that seagull, we gotta land.
Oh God.
And like there's this like everybody as he's getting off the plane is like giving him a standing ovation, and they're like clapping as he gets off. And anyways, so I mean,
didn't it also turn out that the guy was drunk when he was flying the plane? Wasn't that part of it?
I don't know if that's true.
I don't know. I haven't seen Sully, so now don't misquote me. Don't come at me.
Maybe that's true, or later we found that out. But it is weird that he was like considered such a hero for like landing in the river. It was just weird. It was a split-second decision, I guess. This podcast is not about Sully's, but it is about Tom Hanks, and Tom Hanks made some like kind of different choices. Now, he was in a Wes Anderson film, which I thought was a good career choice for him. So I was a little bummed out to see this, but I think it's what you said, Erin. I think Robert Zemeckis is a guy who likes to play with
he likes cutting edge technology.
Yeah, he's a guy who wants to be the
test
first.
It out.
Yeah, he wants to trailblaze in the cutting edge technology departments. And there's like people who love to do that, and it's a risk, and sometimes it pays off, and I don't think it did this time, unfortunately. Also, the writing in this one, it felt like a lot, back to Hallmark movies, it felt a lot less deep. Like it felt a lot. I mean, there was some deep subjects and we touch a lot of sad things, but maybe it was just like there was too many families, too many people, because it's all the families that live in the house over a century, essentially.
Yes.
Much longer. No, it's the beginning of time. So it's like maybe it's just too many stories, too many people for us to really kind of like fall in and dissociate. Like Erin was saying, she was honestly having trouble staying focused on it. Like it was a little bit like she
Yeah,
was losing her a little bit.
it
And
was. Yeah.
I felt the same thing.
And look, there's a difference between watching something at home, and this was a rental for me, versus seeing something in the theater, because you're in a, dark room. You have to pay attention. Your focus is on the screen more so. I think even if I saw this in the theater, I don't think I would care. I feel like audiences need to see some level of action, and when you have a room as your setting for the most part the whole time, and they do some nice tricks with some mirrors so you can see a little bit more of the house, you do get kind of bored, because talking heads are interesting for only so long, right? Because in real life, if you're in a lecture hall and somebody's talking and talking and talking, you're like, okay, I'm interested, I need to pay attention. But there is a point where you're like, I'm kind of like flooded, it's too much.
Yeah.
And with this film, it felt that way. I mean, there's furniture changes, it did feel a lot like a play, but I think it didn't translate,
Yeah, the
because
writing better be amazing if that's like it better be like like blowing the roof off the joint. We better be crying and gut curdling to keep it. It's got to be so gripping.
yes,
Yeah.
and it made me feel, sometimes I've watched a film and I go, wow, I really see the point of what they were saying here, and the way that love is a powerful thing and transcendence and all this stuff. I got zero of that messaging. Now, I don't know if that was the intention. I did not pick up anything like that. I just picked up, okay, so this was a space where a lot of different families have lived, and home is family, and families go through things, but the home stays. The families can move on, but that place is there, and that place will continue to be there. It's kind of in a way what they imply, but it almost felt like I just didn't care.
One of the sort of snarkier reviews that I saw
Yeah.
of it said, if you're interested in a movie about a history of a house, like this one's for you or whatever. Because really, it's like we're basically watching sort of a two-dimensional sort of like if you're interested in the way a room changes over the years, or you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
and I think that their intention was to be like, isn't it amazing what happens inside a house? So like just think of all the things that have happened here. Like afterwards, Nick was like, yeah, this is just like, I guess this is the story about like how much stuff happens inside the house. Like, and I said, yeah, like imagine, because I live in New York and my apartment's probably 150 years old. It's an old building.
Yeah.
And it's like, imagine, like, we were like, whoa, we've lived here 2 years. That's about all you can say. You know what I mean? And I guess they're sort of giving us basics about everybody.
Yeah. And to that end, there's been lots of other movies that are about houses that are way more fascinating. Like about haunted houses. Like the
Yeah,
house
that's
needs to
true.
have some element of personality. This
Yeah.
house has no personality. They changed the wallpaper color, they changed the paint color. Okay, but it's like a very basic level, living room, and that's pretty much it. And like,
Yeah, Downton Abbey. Downton Abbey has a huge personality, and I'm using this as a segue because that actress, Michelle Dockery.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle Dockery played sort of the late 1800s character woman who lived in the house in this movie. Just a little side note, I just been watching a Michelle Dockery show on HBO called Good Behavior, and it's sort of good. Sort of like your monk and you're Columbo, but she's not solving mysteries. She's getting in trouble. It's like Weeds, but really bad. She's not a drug dealer. You know, it's like a woman who can't stay out of trouble. I usually love Michelle Dockery. She was barely in this, but I thought it was interesting that she made an appearance. Like, again, maybe she has a relationship somehow with these people, but it was kind of a strange choice.
That was the thing also, they skipped over what must have been certain families. So you see the family who builds it.
Yeah.
We never see them live in it.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
So that family who's the Victorian family, okay, so they're there, let's say it's around 1910. Mm-hmm. And then the next family comes in and it's like 1920s. Well, the house was built in early 1800. We see the people building the house. Then it's empty for 100 years. It's just interesting, like the way, and maybe these are things we don't need to know, but then it goes back to, then why are certain families in here and why are certain families not?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And just like it's missing so much character development of the characters that are in there. It's almost like they just had so much work to do with the like time erasing technology that they just were like, this is really about the technology and not at all about the movie. And a baby falls and like hits its head. So did you see that?
Yeah.
So awkward. It's like the most AI CGI fall of all time. It's pretty weird. So there's a few like kind of really clumsy kind of moments. Everything else is a little off, but then there'll be moments where you're like, wait, what?
And in that point, that family has 3 kids, right? One of whom is Tom Hanks's character. And then he has a brother who at one point says, I'm going to war. Well, he also has a sister. Nobody cares. We literally hear like nothing about her. She never comes to Thanksgiving. She's there. She's the baby that falls off the couch. Yeah. We see her in the background. She never comes to visit her parents, apparently, who live with Tom. She never does, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's like those other 2 kids are like, peace out, bye, see ya. See ya, oldest brother who now has to take care of our parents and who we'll never see again. Enjoy your life. I mean, it's like, what?
So crazy. Erin.
Yeah.
What's your vinyl record rating?
I give it a 2.
2?
Yeah. Honest to God.
I feel like I was so bored I'd give it a 2 also.
I mean, had we not decided that we would watch it for the podcast, I would have shut it off halfway. Yeah. I don't even know if I would have made it halfway. I mean, I've just come to an understanding in my life where
time is precious.
Time is our most precious commodity. And it's disrespectful to me, to my time, to waste it on bad art. And I just don't want to do that.
Well, I've come to a point in my life where if I pay for a thing, like the home viewing for $19.99 on Amazon, I'm going to watch that thing from the beginning to the end and milk every second of my money out of it because I will not be taken for a fool.
I know. That was the other thing. $20 for this? Oh, give me a break.
These kids these days don't even know the meaning of $1.
They don't. They really don't. They really don't.
Yeah. If there's a home premiere of a movie that's gotten a really low rating on Video and Vinyl Club or Rotten Tomatoes, it should be like $3.99.
I can't see why it. Yeah. I mean, weirdly, it's gotten 2 award nominations.
For what?
What are they for?
Best technology.
Oh my gosh. AARP Movies for Grown-Ups Awards.
No.
Yep.
Maybe that's what it was. Is that
Best
why?
time capsule movie, and it was nominated, and it was nominated for Best Intergenerational Film by the AARP. So,
well, guess what it got on Rotten Tomatoes?
A 3.
35%.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
so let's talk about music just for 1 second. There's two things I want to talk about musically. So the film, it features a soundtrack composed by Alan Silvestri, marking another collaboration between Silvestri and Robert Zemeckis. So basically, he scored Forrest Gump, Back to the Future, and Castaway. So this is like, it's kind of like these guys are all best buddies, and they're like, you know what would be dope? Let's like make a movie where we don't have to do anything, any location changes. Let's just all rent a hotel and like show up to the same place every day, and it's so easy. And like you'll do the music, Alan, and like Tom, you don't even have to leave your room. Just you're gonna sit against a green screen the entire time, and like let's just do this whole thing, and like the old people will love it, and we'll get nominated for an AARP award.
Yeah.
But anyways, I will say that I did kind of like the music for this. It was a little Muzak-y, not gonna lie. There's moments of that. I mean, that's fitting for all of this sort of. This is sort of like the gap of of movies, and so it makes sense that it would be the gap of music as well, or composing.
Ooh,
but
I just got the budget on this. Sorry.
What is it? Go ahead. Tell me.
45 million was how much money they spent. 45 million, that's the estimated, and on opening weekend it made 4.9 million.
Yeah.
And then gross it's made 12 million.
So let's just call this a passion project, as they have lost $35 million on this movie.
Yeah, which maybe they're going to keep getting it back. I don't know, $20 a person. We'll see.
Yeah, especially if they win the AARP award. As far as the songs go, they aren't people singing them. It's all instrumental music that's, probably composed around the scenes and so forth. And it's lovely. I listened to it on Spotify. It has a nice feeling. It seems like something that would make a lot of playlists. You know what I mean? Because it's relaxing. It's like something you put on while you were like in the bathtub, or you like getting your cavity filled at the dentist's office. So whatever. This is like, you can add it to your playlist for when you're studying or something. There's a song that is the Robin Wright and Tom Hanks's characters. It's their like song. I don't know, what do you call that? Their like relationship song, when you're like, oh, what's our song? Like,
yeah, it's our song.
Yeah. That was kind of nice to hear. And it felt, when I heard it, it felt super kind of like modern. And I heard it and I was like, is this Postal Service? It sounded like what's that guy's name? Ben Gibbons? Sounded like Postal Service. And the song's called I've Seen All Good People. So I looked it up, and it's Yes. And Yes is a band from the 70s.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Yeah. And it sounds really like kind of, he has a sort of higher tone voice that's similar to Ben Gibbons. But it felt a little timeless. I was sort of like, oh, maybe that's a good song choice, because it's sort of like a time capsule song, but it feels sort of timeless. And I don't know, it's a nice song. Check it out. I've Seen All Good People by Yes.
So Yes was this progressive rock band from England in the 60s. Their lead guitarist was John Anderson, bassist was Chris Squire, guitarist Peter Banks, keyboardist Tony Kaye, and drummer Bill Bruford. They went through a bunch of different lineup changes throughout their history, during which they had 20 musicians have been full-time members. So a lot of different change up. But they have a crap ton of hits. And I think that song where they're like, this is our song, that was from an album that came out in the 70s and really kind of like hits on the head. That kind of sound of like 70s rock with like the high male vocal or like higher toned male vocal. And it's got like some synthy sounds and guitar. And you think you can see it kind of like playing in a record store and somebody's picking up a Yes record and they're getting a Bee Gees record, like that kind of sound and groove kind of thing, which I think is really, really cool. And actually, I used to make fun of the band Yes because my parents really like that band.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, how about no?
Yeah.
But they've got some really great songs. And I think that was the right way for them to put in music that matched with the timeline, that didn't feel like too much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. You know why? Because as you're reminding me about all of this is that it's super melodic and it's music. It's a band that takes music from the 60s, like you're thinking some of those like male pop kind of guys with like big orchestral backgrounds. It's sort of transitioning that sound into rock gracefully so that it's not like, it doesn't go too, we're not talking T-Rex or anything here. It's like, it's a little bit more melodic, a little bit more kind of like.
Yeah, but you could totally see it in like a concert setting with T-Rex.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
The only #1 single that they had was called Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Oh, yeah.
Owner of a Lonely
Heart.
And that came out in 1987.
Oh, that's so 80s. Yeah, I was gonna say
80s.
that. Yeah, wow.
Or sorry, not crazy. 1987. I think it was maybe in 1983. Whatever, 80s.
Yeah, but
so like when you hear that song, you're like, oh, I know this band. You know this, you know the sound. They're like that. Yeah. Anyway, so if you haven't ever listened to Yes, I highly suggest that you check it out because there are some really fun records. And it's always great to kind of like time travel like that.
Yeah.
Time traveling through music is much more fun than time traveling in a movie where you just see one room.
Yeah, exactly. And where babies fall in strange and terrifying ways because they are computer animated.
And another female character disappears. Okay. Yeah.
It's basically a horror movie because women don't get to do their dreams and men can't leave the house.
Oh my God. Horrible.
All right. Well, I think that, listen, if you want to see it, if you're curious, I mean, there is something to be said for the time. What I keep forgetting what it's called.
If you're looking
time
for something,
erasing technology. There's something to be said for seeing that. So
yeah, and if you're looking for a generally non-violent film, because there's no violence in it, and you happen to be surrounded by people who are registered with the AARP, this might be a great film for you all to watch together.
Anyways, we are so glad you were here with us today. Thank you so much. We are on social media. Please follow us on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. And I just wanted to say that Erin has established our relationship now with iHeartRadio.
Yes. So if you're listening on iHeartRadio, thank you for listening.
Yes. So
we appreciate you tuning in. Yeah.
You can find us anywhere you listen, but wherever you do listen, please take the time to leave us a 5-star review. Every single rating helps. And we saw a couple of you did that this week. Oh, the other thing I wanted to bring up that's super important is Spotify has a comment section now. So if you're a Spotify listener, jump in there and talk to us. It's so fun.
We will be continuing to watch some of the movies that we mentioned in November, but we are going to be expanding as it is December. And next week, we have a very special interview with Lee Leshin, one of the producers for The House From. It's a documentary that's the #1 documentary right now on Apple TV. It is about famous homes from films like Home Alone and
Goonies. So yeah, that's going to be a really fun one.
Yes. So thank you so much for listening. We love you.
Erin, I love talking to you. You're the best.
I love talking to you too. And in case you guys want to see us in person, our all-girl Guns N' Roses tribute band, Guns N' Hoses, will be opening for the Hold Steady, baby, at Brooklyn Bowl this Saturday, December 7th. So If you have tickets to see the Hold Steady already, that's awesome. We'll see you there. If you don't, you might be able to get some through like a second seller or something because the show is sold out. But we would love to see you. So please come by. Thanks again. See you soon. Ta-ta for now.
Bye. See you in the funny papers. That was my grandpa's joke because this is a grandpa movie.
That's a good one. That was good.
Ready? Hit it. 1, 2.